Hi, and welcome to The Brief. I'm Sanam Siddiqui, presenting to you the brief news today. The tension between India and China, as well as China and the US. The US is considering a ban of TikTok, according to the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo. Before India banned these 59 Chinese apps, the government had consulted with the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, as well as the Home Ministry and the Cybercrime Coordination Center. Amongst the apps that were banned were TikTok, Hello, WeChat. These were banned to counter the threat posed by these applications to the country's sovereignty and security. The reason for banning those 59 Chinese apps? Compilation of the data, their mining and profiling by elements hostile to national security and defense of India impinges upon the sovereignty and integrity of India and is a matter of very deep and immediate concern, which requires emergency measures. The ban has been imposed under Section 69A of the Information Technology Act. Read with the relevant rules. That is, the procedure and safeguards blocking the access of information by Public Rules 2009. Most of these banned applications try getting certain permissions that are not required. Some apps that users want may not be properly installed if these permissions are denied, or if even one of these permissions is denied. For example, Share It. This app doesn't work unless the user gives them permission granting access to their location as well as access to the contacts. Why does this app need location information and contact information? After India banned these 59 Chinese apps, US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said that it may also consider a similar move. He stated that India's move would boost India's sovereignty, integrity, as well as national security. And now, the US is considering banning these social media apps developed by Chinese companies like the popular video sharing platform TikTok. The White House Chief of Staff Mike Meadows told Fox News that the message is clear. Our military might stand strong and will continue to stand strong. He also said that we are not going to stand by and let China or anyone else take the reins in terms of being the most powerful dominant force, whether it's in that region or over here. The influential Republican Senator Tom Cotton also said, no country on China's periphery right now is safe from Chinese aggression. All those countries want a close relationship with the US. What he said is, we ought to have one. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. There's going to be a huge after effect of banning these apps for sure, and most of all to the economy in China. Forbes on the 4th of July issue had stated that TikTok's owner ByteDance had invested more than $1 billion to build up its India user base. It now faces losses of up to $6 billion, as hundreds of millions of users are cut off. These apps were banned in the middle of deadly border skirmishes between India and China. Daily border skirmish between India and China also exemplifies the risks due to a forceful and uncompromising approach taken by China towards India. On the 16th of June 2020, at least 20 Indian soldiers were killed. China released 10 Indian soldiers after holding them for days. China had initially refused to release the captured Indian soldiers after the June 15 skirmish in Galwan. Only after the external affairs ministers spoke to each other did China soften its stance. However, refusal to release captives is a departure from precedents, because soldiers taken into custody during clashes along the line of actual control are returned as soon as possible, that is, at the earliest possible opportunity, as per border patrolling protocol. To give you an example, after the standoff at Chumar in 2013, a Chinese officer who fell off a cliff was rescued by the Indian army after the Chinese patrol could not locate him. The officer was treated overnight before he was handed over to the PLA the next morning. So one can understand why this anger against the Chinese and Chinese companies is not a fleeting anger today. It's taken roots, and of course, it's possible that the anger against China, large part due to the coronavirus pandemic, because of the handling of the virus and its outbreak. The fact that it has now become a pandemic of global concern, coupled with China's absolute lack of concern, compassion, or contrition. Any kind of global blowback will inevitably adversely affect the Chinese economy. It reminds me of a Shakespearean quote, "That way madness lies." Also now, the tensions in the South China Sea are at an all-time high. For the first time in 6 years, two US Navy aircrafts are in the South China Sea, the latest show of military strength from the US, as it pushes back against China's sweeping claim to much of the contested region. US-China relations have soured over the last year. They've been steadily deteriorating, and the US has upped the ante of its operation in the South China Sea, staging freedom of navigation operations close to Chinese-held islands, performing overflights by the US Air Force heavy bombers, and conducting joint naval operations with partners such as Japan and Singapore. The South China Sea is an extremely strategic waterway through which approximately 5 trillion worth of goods are shipped every year. The Global Times had tweeted, any US aircraft carrier movement in the region is at the pleasure of the PLA. The US Navy has now got 2 US aircraft carriers at the South China Sea. 2 at US Navy aircraft carriers operating in the international waters of the South China Sea, USS Nimitz and USS Ronald Reagan, are not intimidating. Hashtag at our discretion. China's multiple intrusions along the actual line of control and China's interest in Nepal's politics, as well as the controversy surrounding an 80-kilometer road built by India, hampered China's credibility with India. Added to this is the growing criticism of China's new security law in Hong Kong. A new national security office has been officially opened in Hong Kong, placing mainland Chinese agents at the heart of the territory for the first time. Australia has warned Australian nationals, stating that authorities have detained foreigners because they're endangering national security. This travel warning also added that Australians may also be at risk of arbitrary detention. The presence of the US aircraft in the South China Sea may have played a role in China agreeing to pull back from some friction points along the India-China border. Now, a slow process of disengagement is underway between Indian and Chinese troops along the line of actual control. Our National Security Advisor, Ajit Doval, had a 2-hour-long video conference with the Chinese Foreign Minister, Wang Yi, while both sides had disengaged from Galwan Valley on the 6th of July 2020 as the first step and established a buffer zone. The process continues with a pullback of troops from 2 more points in Ladakh. The buffer zones are to avoid confrontations during the disengagement process. And once this is over, Indian troops will resume the regular patrols. In Pangong Tso, Chinese troops have made inroads into areas previously patrolled by Indian forces. At the north bank of the lake, the Chinese troops have thinned only marginally, and the situation still remains tense as China has still occupied the territory up to Finger Four. Of course, the pullback of troops from Galwan Valley, Hot Springs, and Gogra Post is definitely the first step towards disengagement. 59 Chinese apps were banned, which also included WeChat and QQ. They were banned by the Indian government after numerous complaints were received that they were collecting and sending data of users outside the country. It's a well-known fact that software and hardware developed in China often poses a threat of being used for mass surveillance. What is a cyber attack? It's a powerful tool of modern warfare. Cyber attacks are definitely not new. Iran, Russia, China, and the US have either all been victims or perpetrators of cyber attacks. But what is a cyber attack? It's the use of computer technology to completely disrupt activities of a state or of a company. It can also be the deliberate attacking of information systems for military or strategic purposes. There have been a lot of cyber attacks in the last few months. Over the last 2 months, since border tensions broke out, Indian agencies have been battling direct and indirect attacks. Virtually every sector and cyber platform in India has been facing attacks originating from China, North Korea, and Pakistan. Cyber attacks numbering in thousands have been thwarted by Indian IT defense systems. These attacks have been attempting to gain unauthorized access to Indian systems or to their data. They've also been trying to breach security protocols and deface websites. They've also been creating a huge amount of unusual activity, thereby raising the demand on Indian servers. This is what's called distributed denial of service or DDoS. This is what happens when you overwhelm a computer system. Either the demand slows the system down or stalls it entirely. One of the biggest examples being the 2013 South Korea cyber attack. This cyber attack caused USD 750 million in economic damages alone. In the past decade, the Russian government has mounted more than a dozen significant cyber attacks, sometimes to help or harm a political candidate, sometimes to sow chaos, always to project the Russian power. It's better than killing the soldiers, kill the economy. Presidential election in the US. A whole bunch of Russian hackers penetrated Democratic Party computers and gained access to the personal email of Democratic officials, which in turn were distributed to the global media by none other than WikiLeaks. The CIA as well as the FBI now believe that these intrusions were intended to undermine the election, hurt Hillary Clinton, and help Donald Trump. The cost of cybercrime damages is expected to hit $6 trillion by 2021. India now also to ban Chinese companies from highway projects. India will not allow Chinese companies to participate in highway projects, including those through joint venture agreements. The union minister said that the government will ensure that Chinese investors are not entertained in various sectors like the MSME sector, micro, small and medium enterprises. The road transport, highways and MSME minister said a policy will be out soon banning Chinese firms and relaxing norms for Indian companies to expand the eligibility criteria for participation in highway projects. Currently, there are a few projects which are ongoing which have Chinese participation. When asked about this, the union minister said that the new decision will be implemented in the current and future tenders. The union minister said that rebidding would be done if there are any Chinese joint ventures. India can benefit from these bans. There are multiple Indian rivals to these Chinese companies. It does put enormous pressure on China because these apps were heavily reliant on the Indian market. This move significantly narrows a top growth market for China, and other countries may also follow suit. For ByteDance, which is a Chinese company, India has been the biggest source of traffic, accounting for 30% of the total downloads or 611 million downloads. The flip side, of course, is Chinese funding for Indian companies. Out of 30 unicorns, 18 unicorns have Chinese funding. What do you guys think? Do you agree with banning these apps? Or do you think that the Indian government should not have banned these apps? Drop us a comment. Click on the subscribe button if you like this video. Thank you. Stay tuned. Updated tribal advisory. China's multiple inclusion. The South China